team gives you a closer look at the events that happened around Maine this week.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm Cindy Campbell. An organization called SEED is working to educate students and communities about substance use and the path to recovery, in part through a powerful documentary series. Here's executive producer Dave Packham to tell us more about SEED and the Voices of Hope. Okay, let's start with SEED. Dave, what is SEED?
Yes, Students Empowered to End Dependency is a coalition of 5 school systems: Yarmouth, Bath, Wyndham, Gorham, and Scarborough, and the Scarborough Police Department. The organization was founded to elevate messages about chemical dependency in our community, and we've enlisted the help of students and teachers and other administrators throughout these school systems.
I read a wonderful post on the Scarborough Police Department's Facebook page about this project, and you're looking to start the education about the dangers of substance use with very young children, correct?
Yes, I wanted to emphasize that the school systems do a really good job teaching about issues, in their health classes. What we're trying to do is move that messaging far beyond the classroom, out into our communities in general, and start a dialogue that really elevates this discussion.
I think most people obviously are aware of the fact that there is a substance abuse problem in the state, but I'm not sure a lot of people understand that there aren't really enough resources to cover the scope of the problem.
Well, that's always true about these kind of crises, but I think we can overcome that if we just change the way we think about it a little bit, change our attitude. Today, our culture celebrates and promotes the use of substances that, give us a high.
Right.
And the science tells us that damages our brain. So starting a dialogue about what we can do to have healthier brains, I think, is warranted.
So one of the ways that you're doing this is through Voices of Hope. Tell me about Voices of Hope.
We wanted to have a project that would be bold and have some impact, and we linked in with the recovery community and learned that a lot of people in the recovery community wanted to tell their stories. So you're going to meet throughout this 12-part documentary series 13, 14, 15 relatively young people who will tell their stories very openly with great candor. And, there's no need to amp these stories up. They're just very bold all by themselves. And we tell the progression from experimentation and use of substances. The first episode is called In the Beginning, I Liked It. And then we introduced a lot of experts explaining what happened to these people as they slipped down that slippery slope into addiction.
Right. I watched the trailer and was really struck by some of the people who took part, who talked about things like, hey, I was a great student. I was in field hockey. I was not anyone you would ever think would be using these substances and end up in recovery, and yet this is how that happened. It's different when you hear it abstractly than it is to actually hear from someone who's gone through it.
Yes, it really is. These are very ordinary people. We're all ordinary people.
Right.
And, there's a variety of reasons why people begin using and reasons why they continue. But they're all, they're just our folks. They're our kids, they're our nephews and nieces and our uncles and aunts. And part of our goal is to reduce the stigma associated with substance use disorder, right, so more people will come into recovery.
And you have, I know on your website, you have a lot of links to different resources for folks who are...
Yes, that was, part of our goal, to open up as many links as we possibly can. There's a tremendous amount of work out there that's being done by, other Mainers who are on the front lines.
Right.
And there are treatment methods that work.
Right. And sometimes it's a matter of finding which one is the best fit for you.
Exactly right. There's no one way to recovery.
Okay. When and where can people see Voices of Hope?
It will air in Presque Isle at WAGM at 7 p.m. The first 6 episodes will air every Friday night at 7. In Bangor and in Portland, WADI and WGME, it will air on Saturday nights at 7. We'll run 6 straight weeks, and then we will rerun the first 6 episodes while we finish the last 6 episodes. So it's all current. In fact, I'm on location right now at Day 1 in New Gloucester, which is a home for teenage girls who are suffering from substance use.
Okay.
So we're filming all the time, new stories, new people. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think The stories can be a little heavy at times, but there's a strong sense of hope that's coming out the other end of this whole series.
All right. Awesome. Is there anywhere online where people can see this?
Voices of Hope and Recovery.org is our website, and after the first airing, we'll be posting every episode online.
Awesome. And lots of information at that website as well.
Yeah, tremendous amount of information. I think it's all about kind of getting acquainted with who's involved, and they're all just regular folks like us. So I think that helps make it interesting. They're all people from our community.
Okay. And people who are not using substances, people who are not involved with substances, still a valuable thing for them to watch, because you never know when someone you love might develop a problem.
Well, that is right. I think it's also valuable for people to, as a community, can we reduce a little bit of stigma associated with people that are suffering, because we have a better understanding of how they got there and what their brain is going through. I think there's another very interesting aspect of this, which is as we've learned more and more about how the brain works, there's a flip side. The brain is very efficient at turning, the use of substances into an addiction. It's also very efficient at learning skills that promote our well-being. So if we were to start practicing those skills a little bit more deliberately, I think we would see better outcomes.
All right. Dave, that's what I had. Did we miss anything? Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I think the only thing I'd like to add is how much it's meant to me to work with these people who are in recovery. They've come through a transformation that's very powerful. Recovery for them is a daily exercise or a practice, much like exercise or meditation. And when they deploy it day in and day out, they really transform their lives. And in my mind, they go from being someone who is looked down upon because of their problems with substances to people who we can admire based on how they've transformed.
Find more information, including the episode that aired yesterday evening, at voicesofhopeandrecovery.org. Next, Brewer High School's outdoor education program is hosting a flower and plant sale next weekend, just in time for Mother's Day. Here's Cindy McLaughlin to tell us more about the program. So, Cindy, what is the outdoor education program at Brewer High School?
It is an alternative or one of the choices to fulfill your phys ed wellness credit instead of the regular phys ed class. We have a low ropes course, a high ropes course. We teach map and compass. We do cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, camping in the fall involves hiking and night hiking. And right now the canoes are out ready if we get any water to do whitewater canoeing.
You even go, or at least I know you used to, you even go camping in the wintertime, right?
Yes, they do. Of course, with COVID this year, we did some camping. I won't say we didn't. It's been just a little different how the schedule has to run at school. But they do sleep in tents in the snow and go skiing and snowshoeing during the day. And actually, turns out that most of them really like it.
That's awesome. What a great program for teaching kids how to enjoy the outdoors in Maine. I mean, if they're not into basketball and volleyball, whatever, this is going to teach them some skills they can use and how to enjoy the outdoors.
We like to think of it as a, lifelong learning program, things you can use for the rest of your life, and especially when we're growing up in Maine and trying to show them some things about Maine that's wonderful and that they can do.
Now, can any student sign up for this program?
Absolutely, yes. And some sign up for more than 1 year. They take it their freshman year, maybe to fulfill that credit, and they're not really sure sometimes maybe what it's all about. And we have many that come back for their sophomore, junior, senior years, some as student leaders and become our facilitators and run the camping trips to some degree and run groups and develop some real good leadership skills. So
you kind of touched on this, but you're still able to do this despite all of the restrictions on schools.
Yes, we had some restrictions, to our camping trips, etc. No, we're not using our low ropes course. There's been some games we can't play, things we can't do, and that's okay. But we have managed to be able to go camping. We just have to have less people in the vehicle, wear masks, those kinds of things. Our administration has been wonderful in trying to help us accommodate and still be able to offer some opportunities.
The administration is awesome, but this is not funded like a regular PE class, right?
No. We get a small budget from the school, which is fine. And then we fundraise for a lot of our gear and, camping trips, some of those expenses, things like that. yes.
Now, you just had your yard sale, which you told me was very successful. And next weekend for Mother's Day, you're doing the plant sale again. I missed it last year, but 2 years ago, I got some beautiful flowers from you.
We like to hear that. We don't get very many negative comments. Most people that do get their flowers from Alice's Greenhouse is our supplier, and they're very, very happy with them.
And there was a very nice young man who said, do you want me to help you carry the flowers? And I said, no, I'm fine. And he said, no, I can do it. He got a box and he walked around with me and chatted with me and carried my flowers. It was awesome. It was a great experience.
And that will happen because it'll be like a drive-through. We'll have students here that will do the same thing and walk with the cars, help them out. And it did work quite well last year doing it that way.
The Brewer OE Flower Sale will be held this coming Friday from noon to 5 and Saturday from 8 to 2 at Brewer High School. Finally, today, everyone's talking about the explosion of ticks and picking them off their dogs now that spring has arrived. I wanted to share an interview I did with Dr. Christopher O'Connell of Northern Light Health about Lyme disease. So we're talking about Lyme disease, and we'll get into symptoms in a minute, but can you just give me a general description of what is Lyme disease?
Sure. Lyme disease is the most common vector-borne disease that we have in the United States. It's mostly caused by a bacteria called Borrelia burgdorferi, and it's transmitted to humans through the bite of an infected deer tick. It can cause a variety of symptoms if not identified and if it's left untreated.
Yeah. And that's the only way to get it, right? Is through the bite of a deer tick.
That's correct, yeah. There's no other way to get this other than through a tick. It has to be a certain type of tick as well. It has to be attached over 36 hours, and it's a little gross to think about, but the tick actually has to feed on you and then regurgitate because the saliva is what really carries the bacteria. So this whole process usually takes at least 36 hours to happen.
And that's an important point. It has to be on 36 hours. So if you have a tick that is just burrowed into you, you don't have Lyme disease at that point.
Correct. It's very unlikely, especially if it's under 24 hours, it's very unlikely that any transmission has occurred at that point. You can still have breakage of the skin. You can still have a retained tick, and other problems can come from that, but it's very unlikely that Borrelia burgdorferi bacteria is transmitted.
Okay. So what are the early symptoms of Lyme disease? What should we watch out for?
So Lyme disease makes you feel at first like you have the flu. It can cause a rash, fever, body aches, and joint problems. A rash can develop where you were bitten. The rash often appears within 3 days to a month, and it can occur where the tick bite was. It can be red, but the center of it can be the color of your skin, and it might get bigger over a few days, and to some looks like a bullseye. You'll hear the bullseye rash described a lot with this.
Right.
The rash can then move and show up on other parts of your body as well. You can also develop heart problems from this, such as a slowed heart rate. Neurologic symptoms can develop as well, including a headache and stiff neck with things like meningitis. You can also have a facial drooping and trouble closing one or both of your eyelids, as in Bell's palsy.
Wow.
So those are typically the early symptoms of Lyme disease.
Wow, that's a lot. And you don't necessarily have to have the bullseye rash, correct?
That's correct. Some people don't have these flu-like symptoms. Some people don't have the rash. Sometimes they develop symptoms months later. So it can be a hard disease to diagnose.
And at what point do you seek medical help?
Well, it's important to seek medical attention if you develop any of these symptoms, but it's hard to know, should I go to the office or not? So usually calling your doctor's office, talking with a triage nurse can be beneficial. They can help you determine if you need to be seen or not. If the tick was removed sooner than 36 hours, it's very rare and unusual to develop these symptoms. But if you have, these flu-like symptoms and they're lasting 1 to 2 weeks, you should especially be seen.
Okay. Is Lyme disease contagious?
As a person to person, no, you can't transmit this bacteria. It can't be transmitted from touching, kissing. It can't be sexually transmitted. And it can't be transmitted from a mom to a baby when she's pregnant either.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Is Lyme disease curable?
Yes. Lyme disease is usually treated with antibiotics. And there's a few different types you can use, but we usually use doxycycline unless there's a contraindication. The treatment's usually 4 weeks duration. Sometimes these symptoms improve quickly. Other times it can take weeks or months for the symptoms to go away.
All right. Is there a window for treatment? I mean, is there a point where you were bit, you didn't realize you were bit, and it's been too long to get that treatment?
There isn't really a window for treatment. I mean, because like we said, sometimes these symptoms develop months later than the tick bite. There is a window for something called prophylactic therapy. This is usually a one-time higher dose of doxycycline. This can help prevent the transmission of the disease and dissemination of the disease. You have to meet a couple criteria for that. The tick has to first be identified as an engorged deer tick. It has to be attached for at least 24 hours or unknown. The patient also has to reside in an area where the prevalence of Lyme disease in ticks is greater than 20%. So if you live in Maine, we know it's higher than that. It's around 40% in Maine. The prophylaxis, the therapy that you get, has to be started within 72 hours of the tick removal, so that would be your window. And you have to be able to tolerate the medication doxycycline.
Okay. So if you're bit by a tick, you get Lyme disease, you don't realize you have it, you don't get treatment. What kind of long-term effects are you looking at?
Yeah, there are some long-term effects if you're not treated quickly. This is sometimes called late Lyme disease. Some people develop late Lyme disease without having any earlier symptoms. Most common symptoms of late Lyme disease include swelling of the joints, like your knees. But some people can even develop trouble with their memory or cognition or thought process. But usually the late symptoms have to do with joint pain and swelling.
Okay. That's an awful lot coming from a tiny little tick.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately.
And there are so many of them in Maine. We're already pulling them off our dog and off ourselves. So daily tick checks are important, I would think.
Yes. If you're looking at ways to prevent this, it's really about avoiding ticks or decreasing the habitat of ticks. Or if you do get exposed, removing them quickly. So ways you can do that, you can avoid things like tall grass and shrubs. And, ticks can't really fly or jump. A lot of people say that, but it's usually passed from walking by, either your animal or yourself. So you can try to use insect repellents and applying pesticides as well to reduce the tick habitat. There are a couple of tips you want to use if you know you're going to be in a place that is a high prevalence of ticks, like in the long grass shrubs, if you're hiking, things like that, where you'd want to wear shoes, long sleeve shirts, long pants if you're going outside. You can even tuck your pants into your socks to prevent any skin exposure. You want to wear light colored clothes so you can spot any ticks that may be on your clothes quickly. Bug repellents can be beneficial, especially sprays or creams containing DEET. You shouldn't use DEET on babies younger than 2 months, and you recommend using no more than 30% DEET on young children. You can also use something called permethrin as well. After being outside, you'd want to shower within 2 hours. We know these ticks, they can't live in soil, they can't live in water, so that's a good way to kind of prevent that. You can put your dry clothes briefly into a dryer for about 4 minutes to increase the temperature. That can help. But you want to check your clothes, your body for ticks after being outdoors. You want to check everywhere, including your scalp, your waist, your armpits, groin, and even the back of your knees. And maybe make sure you check your children as well. We know that deer and mice carry ticks, so if you're in a place that has deer and mice, you might want to take some steps to limit that as well.
Find more information on the Maine CDC website. I'm Cindy Campbell. Thanks again for joining us, and stay healthy.
Join us again next weekend for Maine Concerns with your Town Square Media News team.